Darlene, you can ask.
Oh, okay. All right. So it was just that because I'm not knowledgeable is all. There was not, it said card member services and there was just not an explanation. And I was thinking usually it says supplies or something like that on there.
That's a credit card, Darlene. And if you want to see the statement, we can forward it. But that's the card member services is generally it could be, whether it's Amazon products or things that are ordered online, and that's the bill for that.
I think that the only thing that was on, it was $1,300. Is that right? I don't have it in front of me. Yeah, those were all the Lego robotics kits.
Gotcha. And then the other thing, because usually usually she puts it in parentheses what it's for. Mm-hmm. And then I was just curious, the James Wadman audit, was that an audit for Cranberry Isles or was that across the board?
So we do, that is specific for Cranberry Isle. Number one, we're required to do an audit. And James Wadman is the firm. They do both the towns and the schools, but yes, that's specific to Cranberry. And when it's the AOS, it's broken out into the AOS warrant.
Gotcha.
And that's an annual thing, darling.
Okay. And then the other thing was the 2 consultants. I'm just curious, was that a consultant that we shared with, or were they consultants specifically for the Cranberry Isles?
They were specifically for us. We are using the same consultants on Frenchboro, but they bill each school separately based on the hours that they provide to those teachers. So yeah, those were just for Cranberry Isles hours with the consultants.
Okay. And what was it consulting based on like the remote learning? Was it for that or for other things or?
It's really, so we've I talked a little bit about it last meeting. We've shifted, instead of sending teachers out to workshops that are very generalized, we're having incoming professional development that the teachers are able to work with the consultant or coach directly and say, these are the grade levels I have. This is the subject I'm teaching. This is the issue I have. And then they're actually helping them come up with instructional resources, assessments, progress monitoring, just anything. And it's very, very, very targeted to what they actually need in the classroom right now for the kids that are in front of them. So it's been really great. So we have it for math and for literacy. And at the end of the year, we're going to have a few sessions with PBIS, which is positive behavior intervention and supports on like classroom management and best practices in that. So it's been a nice shift for us because so often we go to a big conference and we have to we're like, it kind of applies to us, but not really. So this has been just super targeted professional development for each of the teachers.
Darlene, just don't ever hesitate you can call our office, Annette or myself. And I mean, we're fine doing it this way, but anytime you have a question, just give us a shout. We get it all the time, and we try to put the stuff like you said in the margin, but don't ever hesitate. We can provide you any of the backup info.
Well, and part of it's just a learning process. So when I'm signing off on it, it's kind of like I'm just curious to know what it is. So,
well, sometimes these questions lead to, hey, we've caught stuff before just through the questions, so it's good. That's the check and balance of this process, and that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Darlene. Is that it for questions?
Yep, that's it.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so let's move on to the approval of the minutes from March 5th. Did you guys have a chance to look them over?
Yes, I make a motion we approve the minutes from March 5th's meeting.
Okay, thank you, Darlene. And do I have a second? A second. Carrie seconds. Ooh, okay. All in favor of approval of the minutes from March 5th, 2021?
Aye.
That passes unanimous. Okay, the next thing is public comment.
Haven't received anything, Amy. So I'll check with Selena after the meeting, but I'm not aware of anything that's come in at this time.
Okay, very good. Very good, thank you. Next thing is reports and updates. And it looks like the principal's report is first. So Haley, you want to take that on?
Sure. Okay, let me just do it this way. So not a ton of new items to report, no changes in our enrollment. All the positions that were open last month are still open. We have been able to do some interviews for the classroom teacher for next year, but we have not hired anyone yet. And we have an interview this afternoon for the long-term sub position. So fingers crossed there. So that's a good thing, but still no applicants yet for guidance, ed tech, or music. For what's happening at the school, the Lego Robotics Club has been off and running. The kids love it. And just, you know, on top of everything else, just wanted to thank Haley and Lauren for offering that and staying after school for that. We'll have parent-teacher conferences next week, and there is a half day on Wednesday for that. In April, we've traditionally gone, well, the middle schoolers, older kids have gone to Arts Week at MDES, and that's been something that has always been a real highlight of the spring for the kids. Since, you know, we won't be able to do that this year, we're holding our own Arts Fest. So we are going to have extra art sessions with Mary, as well as some live workshops and also some like virtual workshops in music and creative writing and things like that. So we're kind of putting that together for the week of April 12th, which will be fun. In May, the NWEAs will be administered to all of our students. And this is what I was talking about in the voucher. You know, we've been continuing with our instructional coaching for our staff, and we will be doing some PBIS consulting this spring. And it's also a way, it was another layer of support during my leave, that the teachers will have access to this PBIS consultant if they have any questions around classroom management or student behaviors or need a little extra support. So I'm feeling pretty good about all the supports we have in at this point for, you know, the last 7 weeks of the year. They're, the teachers feel like they're definitely all set. I have my whole grid laid out for them. And they're like, yeah, we're fine. And probably at this point, they're like, just go because you're too scattered to be helpful right now anyway. So yeah, so that's all in place. My leave begins after April vacation. And for buildings and facilities, all that stuff, no updates there, except that the van really was fixed this time. Like we've had it fixed a couple of times, but this time it is starting and knowing that it's in park. So we've been able to use it every day this week, which has been awesome. So it may have a little bit of life left in it after all. And then I attached the April calendar, which also went out to parents this week, print and through the newsletter. So any questions about anything? Okay.
Amy,
Yes.
just a follow-up, a clarification. I didn't know when you wanted to get into it, but I just wanted to give an explanation and talk with Haley just about our process, because we had a candidate we were going to bring forward for a nomination, and so we didn't have that on the agenda. So I can. Do you want us to get into that now, or would you like to wait?
Well, I think that, yeah, we can do that now. That kind of fits with principal report.
Right. So Haley, I didn't talk to you, but are we back in the process here?
Well, today was the deadline, the official deadline. So by 3 o'clock this afternoon, I will let you know for sure.
All right. So what we've done, just so the board knows, Haley and her team, identified a candidate. I met with the candidate virtually. I did an interview, and so we've done reference checks. So we hope to bring a nomination, but you just heard the hot off the press. We'll know this afternoon. So we could do one of two things. If we have a successful nomination for the board, we could either schedule a special meeting at your convenience, or we could do it in May. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. And then the other piece is we will be finishing up and bringing, any of the probationary status individuals forward for the board's review. And then Haley, with her leave, when she's comfortable and back, I want to make sure that we can circle back with the board and do the personnel evaluation on Haley in an executive session. But obviously, we're going to make sure that we have her baby delivered before we do that. Haley, was there anything else we needed to add? I know you were going to talk about the leave and the process, just to make sure the board, parents, and everybody's comfortable with what we're going to do here when you have your leave.
Yeah. I don't, hopefully after this afternoon, I'll be able to share a better update for the teaching part. Like I said, the principal part is pretty much squared away. We've finished pretty much all of our purchasing for the year. Anything that I know is coming in May or June, I've let Annette know, to look for it and what it will be coded under. But there isn't anything much. Mostly it's just going to be the few consultant bills. And yeah, I have check-ins scheduled basically every other week. I have someone from central office meeting virtually with the teachers. Mark has a day, Julie Meltzer has a day right before NWEAs and report cards. Jill Cohen has a day, again, end of year reporting and report cards, because she's really familiar with that process. And I'm trying to think of who else. Carrie's going to take minutes for me at the next board meeting.
I get to work with Carrie again.
Yes. So, and then I just have this same kind of checklist I had last time. If you have questions or around this is who to contact. And I've communicated with all the people who are on the spreadsheet. So, and again, all the teachers, they know the drill. They've been here. They know the parents, the kids. I'm pretty confident that they're going to just kind of.
Wait till you guys see my newsletter. Just kidding. April Fools.
Yeah, there will be no newsletter probably unless it comes from Haley. So yeah, that's the principal piece. And again, I put in to my maternity leave with the business office that they're going to allow for a couple days for me to work in case we don't finish the hiring process. There's times where I'm going to be able to answer my phone and talk to people and, do a few things. So that's sort of built in there too. Just it'll be from a distance, which we're all used to now. So the long-term sub position was the more difficult thing to cover. We had some interest, the person reconsidered, and we have not had any bites from any of the newspaper ads or from serving schools, but through our network, we have someone interested. And I'm very excited about that. So it will likely be a combination, like I mentioned before, of an instructional person to be in the classroom, deliver the instruction, and then a special ed teacher to supervise and oversee that instruction so that the hours still count, but the programming is delivered the same way that it has been this year. So again, hopefully after this afternoon, I will send you all an email, or probably not right this afternoon, but as soon as the process is completed, early next week, hopefully at the latest, I'll be able to share that out. And so I'm feeling a lot better now about that piece of the plan. So if there's any questions about either of those things that I can answer.
Just to kind of restate it, make sure I have it right, Haley.
Yeah.
Like the long-term sub is for your special ed teacher position.
Yeah, for the teaching
It's gonna
duties.
be covered by two different people probably. And the special ed person kind of being more remote and overseeing what's going on, and then an in-person teacher that we already have on staff doing that work.
No, we have someone that we're interviewing to be the in-person body to replace me, and then the special ed will oversee the special ed programming elements of it and just stay in touch with that person weekly, see if they have any questions, that kind of thing.
All right, so that'll be 2 or 3 days a week, or 4?
We have it right now as advertised 4 days a week for the in-person position, and then the special ed oversight would be like once a week.
Okay, and so you'll hear this afternoon about that person.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing Mark was talking about was the teacher position for next year. And do we have a candidate for that?
We have a candidate that we offered the position to. They have not made their final decision. We gave them this week to think about it because it is, a relocation and, a big commitment. So we gave them until the end of the day today to decide. So if they accept it, we'll bring it forward. And if they don't, then we're going to reopen. And
I'm excited about the candidate, but again, as Haley said, it's a big commitment. So we want to make sure it's a good match. It's a good fit. So, we're working with the individual. Hope to have an answer or some information for you guys real soon. We'll have an update real soon.
Okay, so there's two that we'll hear from this, today or this weekend. Okay, nice. And then the other positions, I know they're, really like small, like the guidance and the music, but we'll advertise again in the spring for those.
Yeah, they've been ongoing advertised on Serving Schools. And we can look at putting it into the Islander again. We didn't have any bites from that. But like you said, now the later we get into spring, there starts to be like a domino effect, of people kind of shifting and looking for positions. So maybe after April vacation, it would be good to do a blast because Hancock County Help Wanted will do it on Facebook. So we'll put those out one more time in the spring, but we keep them on Serving Schools all the time and on the district website.
Okay, very good. And when are you due?
Soon, end of this month.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll be
close.
Yeah.
Although trying not to count days because I'm like, it's fine.
You'll make it.
Ready to be done. Not teaching, done being pregnant.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have questions for Haley? Or about the print about her leave or anything? Okay. Okay, so I think we can move on then to discussion items. Room and board rates for secondary students. Did we have some information or an update?
Haley, did we I know that you and I had a conversation about, the model that they use out on Swans. You've had some conversation. Did I drop the ball on that?
No, I emailed out Swans policies for them to look at. And aside from that, I didn't really have any additional information to share. It was more, I'm fine with whatever the board wants to do. I think it's just another point of clarity that will help us, when we get requests and to put into our fact sheets.
So Amy, we can go down this to a couple roads. I could suggest, we have policies that are AOS policies, but again, it doesn't preclude local boards from establishing a policy, or the board could establish rates by vote or a procedure. You do it that way too. So you really have a couple of pathways, but I do think it's important, to put something in writing. So parents and families, you have a reference document planning, but we can go in whatever direction the board wants to go.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw Carrie with her hand up.
Yes, so I just have kind of like a bizarre question, but when parents take their children off and they go off with them, they normally like rent a house, and we don't necessarily pay for their children to go to school at MDI high school. So now if we're paying parents a room and board fee, does that mean that we're going to have to start paying for the students at the high school? And I think this conversation comes up a lot. We've had it several times since I've been on the board about the parents receiving the stipend. And I understand where it comes from because it is a hassle. It is a hardship. It's one of the biggest hardships when it comes to school age children is that whole high school piece. It's probably the hardest thing. But I know that just recently we've had families that have done like a split family situation, and we've, one parent goes off with the child and the other parent is still on island, and we haven't done that, but we also haven't paid for their kids to go to the high school. So I understand that we kind of want uniformity across the board so that everyone's kind of doing the same thing. But I think the way the way I've always understood it is that where the parent is the child's home. And I think, I guess in a weird way, I think this opens up a weird wormhole situation where if families are separated and then like one parent has the kid during the week off island, does that parent get to collect the room and board while the parent on island doesn't? And I just have like a lot of weird scenarios that run through my broken brain. And I think about like, you know, the room and board situation was because families had to send their kids off island. And it was the way the town helped compensate for that. But now I feel like we're trying to pad families to stay here when there's no guarantee any family's ever going to stay here. And I just worry about us now. All of a sudden, we're going to pay for the family to partially be off island. We're going to be giving them the stipend. Does that mean that we're also paying for the high school? Because that's going to make our budget go up. It could make our budget go up a lot because some families choose to move off and they rent and we don't pay. So I'm really confused on how that all works.
Mark, I see you with your hand up, but just to be clear, Carrie, we haven't, approved the French borough policy as our policy.
No, I know
and-
we're having a discussion about it.
Yeah, we're discussing it, right.
But I don't understand how it would work if in the past when families go off, we don't pay for the high, like that's the part that my brain is broken on.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is just part of the discussion. And, we have to honor the history too. Each island probably has a different historical thing that they've done, and we can't necessarily adopt something that, another island does. But it would be good to clarify what we're doing. And this is just to take into, consideration of something someone else does. And do we want to try to do it that way? Or what do we like and not like about it? And okay, Mark.
Well, I think, Amy, it would help the board. I would suggest two things. First of all, I agree with you 100%. It has to work for the Cranberries. It has to be something that works for the board and for your communities. But I think that if Amy wanted to have a conversation with Tammy Tripler, just for context, I think it's probably more similar, the Cranberries to Swan's situation. Just Tammy has a lot of historical knowledge and just have a conversation that way. But I would also think maybe a three-way where we bring in the Nancy Thurlow, who's got that historical knowledge, and talk. And then after that, see where the board would like to go. Do you want a policy? Do you want a procedure? Or do you want to tailor something just specific to your well, obviously you want to tailor it to your community, but I might suggest, just having a conversation with Tammy Tripler. Another one too, who's good is historical knowledge is Marissa Rosinski. Marissa was out on French Borough. She was the chair. She's a Swans Island board member. She's had kids go through the high school. And so those two individuals, Tammy and again, you guys all have historical knowledge too, but I think you'd get a really good sense of what works, best for those types of unbridged island communities. And then you could have a pathway forward for yours. Just a suggestion. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I mean, I think it does, there's a lot of things that aren't really clear about how you would reimburse a parent when they're living off, I think when they're living off island with the kid, they're technically enrolled in the high school as a resident, and we don't pay tuition, we don't pay room and board, and that's how it's been out here. And we wouldn't want to change that too drastically. But I think if we want to come up, I think it'd be nice, it would be wise to come up with a policy that covers us. And maybe it's, maybe work, like Mark said, talk to the other island school board members and come up with a policy. Maybe it'll work with Frenchboro. We can adopt a similar policy, or maybe we can't. We have to stick with our own. Any other discussion, Carrie?
I do think it's important because I feel like this question does come up a lot, and it has come up a lot in the recent years.
Yeah.
It seems like almost every year we're discussing who's allowed to get paid and who isn't. And so I do think it's one of those really, really murky waters. And it's hard. It is incredibly hard because we come out here. Most of us that are out here now are people who have moved out here, and we move out here knowing that there's no high school. And so I think it is one of the biggest pieces to education out here. But I think it financially, as a school board, we have to remember that we have to remember we have a budget we have to think about. We have other things, it's such a hard thing, but I do think it is 100% something that we need to have written down, because the question just comes up a lot on who's allowed to get paid.
And this is really aligned with the questions we have, the good questions we have around transportation with boats and stuff. So I think, both areas, we have an opportunity here to clarify, make sure that we're listening to the community. And I think both areas, I would just recommend that we put something in writing, whether it's a policy or not, but we can gather the information. And then I think having that information in writing for parents and community members, one or two things are going to happen. They're going to either say thank you, or we have more questions about that, and the board can always revise it. I mean, I think you're going in the right direction.
All right, so I guess Carrie.
Darlene has her hand
Oh,
in.
oh, Darlene, I'm sorry, couldn't see you, Darlene.
That's okay. That's okay. So, and I think it's important to note that what was suggested via Swans, what Swans does, and what Haley had suggested was just wasn't it up to a $50 a week stipend, so that in the event there's something that the kid needs to stay after for school, then that $50 could be used to pay for a hotel. So then they wouldn't technically be moving off island. Or in the event that the families had to stay off island, not always, but frequently. So then it was a $10 a night thing. So if you're renting it, so you're looking at $200 a month for a family. And I'm assuming the families wouldn't be working off island and wouldn't be off island all the time. I'm assuming they would still be primary residents of the Cranberry Isles and working and living on the Cranberry Isles, would be my assumption. Because I think if you are moving off and not coming back and forth, and not coming back when when you're able to ride the boat back and there's not a special activity, then I think you need to differentiate, however you say that word, what is considered moving off and makes that their primary resident versus what makes this. Because if the majority of the nights are spent here and your rental is only used for certain nights, then it's just important to differentiate that. And we're talking $200 a month versus the $25 a night we give to John Doe to keep our kid, whoever. So I think that's an important thing when you're talking about the budget. Because, and Mark made a good point about the boating. We have paid for boating for the split families, for the families that have moved off island. We've paid for the boating to come back and forth, for entire families to move off. And then when they do come back here to their island home. So, and I think getting that writing, just like getting the writing that you can pay for boarding at a boarding school and their boat transportation, because that was some confusion. So there's been a lot of confusion. So I think getting some things in writing would be helpful.
Okay, thank you, Darlene. Carrie, you've got your hand up.
That's the key piece, is that where they're sleeping, because over the years, that's the one thing that keeps coming up, is what does residency entail? How, like, a few years ago, it was like, if they're spending the majority of the nights off island, then they're not considered a resident of the town, because it was something to do with where you sleep at night. And that's why one of the families that was doing the split home, they were not eligible. Their family had to pay, that the town of Northeast Harbor was paying for their high school. We weren't, because they were sleeping off island. So I think that's the key piece, is if it's a once or twice type of thing, I think of course that there should be some kind of like, hey, we can help you out, and that should be in writing. But I think if someone is choosing to get a rental in the event that their child is going off and they're sleeping there even 4 nights a week because of stuff, I think that's the piece that we have to worry about, is that residency, and what does the word residency mean for our town? Because even with our parking passes, it's how many months you live here, like what it's, that's the key piece. And that's the key piece that we keep coming back to every year.
Right. Right, and if it's like $50 to help you when you go off and you have to stay off for special events or something, it's not necessarily an every week thing. I think it seems like that's what the Swans Island policy might be.
It was $10 a night the way I read it,
Okay,
and it had to be approved by the board.
right, like in advance, right?
Just so you guys know, this is I don't want to say an issue, but we have these conversations all the time on Swans and Frenchboro too. So you're not alone, and they've taken some steps. I would just say that they've taken some steps to drill down a little bit further. I think you're on the right track. I think the way you're doing it is really thoughtful, and it's, make it part of your budget process, which it is, because you have to review the amount of funds. But I think if you start there by saying, what's the history on this? What's the need for the community? Put something in writing, and then you can amend it that way. But I think I would encourage you to have those conversations, especially with Nancy, because Nancy just has her mind. She remembers everything, and she's got 40 years worth of knowledge working with all the islands. And so I think she'll be a huge resource for you guys.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. We should definitely, get talking to some of these people more in depth and try to draw up some sort of policy that we can, that can apply to us, our Isles. So, I'm happy to call Tammy, and Nancy at some point.
I'll forward you Tammy's number, Amy, if you don't have it, and I'll get that. I'll give Tammy a heads up too.
Okay. Haley, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to say, then after our next discussion or whatever, I could draft something that I think might capture kind of where we were at, and then we could look at that, a following board meeting, something like that. Well,
Okay.
whenever.
Are you going to be at the next meeting?
Maybe. Maybe.
Super mom. Okay. All right, so let's do that. I'll call a couple of people, and Carrie or Darlene, if you guys want to follow up or do some more research or have some conversations, that's encouraged too. All right, so let's move on to action items, and I don't see anything. So let's move on to other business. Anybody have other business? Okay, so then future agenda items is the next thing. We definitely should keep the room and board on the agenda.
And I would,
And- Oh, Darcy.
I would add to that the high school transition little pamphlet, memo, whatever we were calling it. We probably need to get that finished up when we can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's-
that could use another
thanks.
review. Oh, sorry, Mark.
No, I was going to say, thanks, Darlene. You know, that we get caught up in the pandemic stuff, and that's a good reminder. Thank you.
I can send it out again. I don't have anything new to add that I've learned. So unless there's further questions I can find out, I'm kind of at a stopping point with it. It's captured everything that I know to date. So I'll send that out again so you guys can take a look at it one more time and see what's missing.
Do we do, and I should know, Amy, can I ask a quick question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Do we do, maybe it happens informally, but there's a lot of knowledge from families that have gone through the process and families that are going to start it. Is there anything that's formalized on the island or informally where a forum is held, or just, hey, these are some things that you might want to consider or know, where we can actually have kids at the high school that are there that can talk about not necessarily do's and don'ts, but helpful hints to that, and parents. Has that happened, or does that happen? Okay, that might be another avenue too, because I think that's a wealth of information, and people that have gone through it, it's kind of like when you're looking for directions, right? You ask a local, you're gonna get some good directions, and I think the more resources we can give to parents and network, I think that's another positive. I've been trying to think of ways. It's kind of like I was a high school principal, and how we do transition from 8th to 9th grade. Well, this is just an extension of that, because not only are they transitioning from 8th to 9th grade, but they're transitioning from their Unbridge Island community, and they have to navigate a lot more than just the kid that's, on MDI or coming from Trenton.
And if I may add to that, Mark, I don't know about other kids, but so I shouldn't speak for other kids, but I think that some kids, mine, have trouble with that transition. Anything we can do to help prepare the parents and the kids for that transition, because the whole idea of lockers is new,
Right.
Going to actual cafeteria is new, and having to, and changing classes, it's just so new and so challenging, I think, for our students. So anything that we can promote or organize or coordinate to help the kids with that transition. And I think helping the parents will ultimately help the kids, because then the parents will be a little more relaxed. Speaking for myself.
And I thought of one other thing, and I don't know if it's possible, but just like a student ambassador, big brother, big sister type of thing can be a good resource for those kiddos.
Right. Absolutely. I think those are all great things. We can pull in some of our graduates. And they do is Douglas Corman doing the middle school retreat? They didn't do that this year because of the
They did it this year. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he doesn't do anything remote.
He didn't this year because usually it's in January. So, but I'm sure next year he'll have that back on the agenda.
Okay. All right. So those are some good things for the agenda. Now, I think Carrie dropped out. She didn't come back in. Oh, okay.
She came back in for a second and we just lost her again.
Okay. Because I thought I saw her hand up and I wasn't before she dropped off. There she is. Hi, Carrie.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay. I thought you did. And then you dropped out.
Sorry. I was gonna say that I from what I did hear of Darlene before I ended my call for some strange reason, I think everyone, it is when I was getting ready to send Brenna to high school, I had been talking to people for years about the high school transition. I was obsessed and I was scared about my daughter going off to high school. And I was rightfully so. Everyone that I talked to, their child struggled. everyone. And it was because our school system, we have the same teach, and this is not to fault our system. Our system works for us. But when we send the children out into that real world, and it's a different system, and like Darlene said, just the cafeteria alone overstimulates so many of our kids. Years ago, it was brought up that maybe we should start sending off our middle schoolers to Northeast Harbor so that they could start to acclimate. That is something that Corey did. Corey did go partial week off island to school over there so that he could acclimate. I don't know if that's the answer. I don't know how we prepare these kids for different teachers, different time schedules, how to advocate for themselves, how to navigate hallways, how to navigate lockers. There is so many pieces to high school, especially a public high school, not even to mention them going off to boarding schools and having to self-regulate. It is such a huge piece. It is such a mind-blowingly huge piece, and we don't set our children up for success. But I think it's because it is so overwhelming and it is so individualized on where our kids go. And I think as parents, I know for me personally, when Brenna went to high school, I didn't know who to contact. I didn't know who to speak to. I didn't know how to check in with my kids. And that was on me. That's all my fault because I didn't push those relationships. I didn't push that information. And so I think the transition to high school, hands down, it is hands down the hardest, like I've said it before in this meeting, that's the hardest part of the education in our school and in our unique environment is sending our kids off to high school.
And I'll go a step further, Carrie, and say it's the hardest part for me for living on the island is the high school dilemma, because you either send your kid away or you take away sports from them. Like that's your real, or them. So those are your three choices, really. You take away all after school activities, and say you're going to come back and forth every day, or you send them completely away and don't see them at all, or you homeschool them. And if there's other choices out there, that would be awesome. That would be amazing to know about. But I don't know any that I have found. And we've tried all three of those. And so any support that other islanders that's been here a while can give us newbies, me as a newbie, is always welcome. So any forum, anything would be very helpful.
I'm wondering, Amy, can I ask?
Yes.
You know, there's a wealth of knowledge. Laura, one of our teachers out on Frenchboro, she's been a veteran educator. Certainly Lindsay. But I'm wondering if the TLC might have some resources too that have worked on other unbridged islands. And so let's reach out to them to see what resources might be available. They might have things that we haven't thought of. And I will just say too, these are all probably the two most stressful things for me as a parent was when we were sending, our son off to kindergarten and then high school. And I didn't live on an unbridged island. So you add that to it, it's pretty intense. But the other thing is people's needs are different, families and kids. So I think, we can't have a one size fits all approach, but I think the more resources we can bring to people, the better served those kids will be. So I think we ought to reach out to the TLC to see what resources they might have.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So that's three or two good future agenda items, and the hiring will probably be on there too. Anybody else have future agenda items? Okay. Date and time of our next meeting. We have down Friday, May 7th. So that will be after the town meeting, because the town meeting's on May 1st. Should we meet via Zoom? Mark, we're going to stick.
I think at this time, Amy, we should plan for that.
Okay.
And as I've said, once the governor's guidelines, open things up and, you know, if you guys are comfortable, I think in May, we're planning on trying to resume in-person meetings, but it's all subject to what the conditions are. Are most of the people out on Cranberry, how do I want to ask this? Are vaccines accessible, pretty accessible to folks? If they want them, have people been able to? Okay, good.
Yeah, we've had the Seekers Mission come out and
Yep.
do vaccines
Yep.
for
So
everybody over 18.
awesome. So I think that we'll know a lot more, but you know, but when we publish the agenda or we review it with you, we can determine whether or not it's going to be a remote or in person. But I sense that it may be a remote, but we'll see. I think a lot of it's going to depend on town meeting, right? And the dynamic for that.
Right. Carrie?
I think that that's not a bad thing, the Zoom meetings, because I think we probably have more people actually attend our meetings than we have in person. So this has been a great forum, and I'm grateful for this time of pandemic that we were able to do this. And I think, you know, Mark, for you getting everything lined up and us being in this form and being able to be broadcast, because I think it's a great level of transparency that we haven't had before, which is great. I mean, I'd love to see more people at our meetings, but this is great that in the middle of a pandemic we can do this.
Well, thank you. But truth be told, the credit goes to Josh Young.
Yeah.
Josh has done an incredible job. He's really stepped up, and boy, he and all the tech people, we've been really blessed. So
Thank you, Josh.
Over those guys.
It makes it more accessible.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll shoot for 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And I think that, you know, when we do go back to in-person, I'd like to have our first meeting be at Longfellow, if everyone else is all right with that, but
Cool.
I don't know when that will be.
I'm looking forward to coming out there on that. I love going out to the Cranberries. I want to get back on the boat. I want to come out and see the kids, and I can't wait.
Great. Okay, then I take a motion to adjourn at 10:05.
Make a motion.
Okay, Darlene motion, Carrie second.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
See you
thank you,
later.
everybody.
Thanks a lot, guys.